Welcome to High Infidelity, the best cheating videos on YouTube. If you enjoy this content, remember to subscribe and turn on notifications. Now let's get into the video.
It's done. Served her yesterday. I had her served the day before. For those who are wondering, I wasn't in the right frame of mind to write about it yesterday. I'm still not sure, but I'll get it off my chest. I got up and left the home, getting some food in the meantime while she was leaving for work. I rented a vehicle, then returned home and changed the locks. My buddy and her husband came over, bringing a friend with him, and we packed up her belongings. We piled up our bedroom furniture, which I had given her as a wedding present, my sofa, my dining table, and everything else she had soiled. I put it in storage. Put all of her clothing in trash bags. I was about to mix her soiled clothing with the clean ones, but my buddy wouldn't allow me. We finished just after 11 a.m. I went to her workplace at lunchtime and purchased flowers and chocolates. I walked in and gave her the flowers and sweets, as well as a huge hug and kiss. Her employees were doing the "oh, that's so lovely" thing as she was all grins and blushes. I told her that I would love to take her to lunch, but that I needed to go have a checkup on my leg, but that I didn't want to make arrangements for the night because I wanted to give her a night to remember. I kissed her farewell and began walking away. I'm going to start calling her GM or FT at this point. I spotted her boss as I was leaving and gave him a huge grin and said, "Hey, how are ya?" I waved goodbye and walked away. Then I went to get some food. At 2 p.m., a deputy would arrive at my wife's workplace to serve her. I was standing in front of FT home around 2 p.m. I emailed him the photo I shot the day they were captured. I also snapped a picture in front of his home and sent it to him. Mrs. FT answered the door when I knocked. She knows a little bit about me from parties and events at my wife's workplace. I informed her that my wife and her husband had an affair. She wasn't convinced. I showed her the first photo I took, as well as a selfie they took when my wife was giving him a blowout on my sofa. And then she smacked me. I simply stood there, and she burst into tears. I gave her a thumb drive containing everything I had on my wife and her husband. I told her my wife was cheating on me with many guys and that I needed to get tested for STD. I handed her my lawyer's business card and my phone number. Then she inquired as to why I was torturing her. And to be honest, I'm not sure why I did it. I did a lot of damage to her. I feel like the greatest jerk for doing that. I told her she had a right to know and felt like a jerk for answering her. My phone began blowing up as I was walking away. I didn't return any phone calls or messages. I just returned home. I altered my Facebook status to divorced when I got home. I began reading my wife's messages. "What on earth is this? What exactly are you doing? That nonsense." I responded to her message by telling her she may come to the home at 7 p.m. and knock a minute before to grab her things. FT apparently didn't tell her what I did immediately away since I'm sure he was dealing with his own issues at the time. But my wife texted me a few minutes later, me for informing Mrs. FT. So he did inform her. My friend, who was covering for my wife, whom I'll name Amber, began contacting me. So I responded. With, "How long have you known that my wife and FT were having an affair? Please do not deceive me." And she confirmed my suspicions. The whole time. Since long before my wife and I met. The whole time, I'd been the supporting actor the whole time. My whole marriage is a horrible farce. That's a tough thing to take, let me tell you. I questioned why she hadn't told me. She said it was because they expected me to go, get aggressive and so on. I told her she should know than that. She said she kept it a secret since she was a friend of hers. How about me? Wasn't I? If I knew her spouse was cheating, wouldn't she want me to notify her? Isn't it my better responsibility as a friend to inform her of anything she should be aware of? She agreed. So I hung up and emailed her images of her and her husband that my wife had taken, as well as my lawyer's phone number, saying that my lawyer knows all I know. Then I informed her she could never contact me again. My wife arrived at the home at 4 p.m. and discovered the locks. She began shouting and knocking on the door. I didn't respond. She tried phoning one more. I switched off my phone's ringer. She then smashed a window and fled. At about 7 p.m., Two deputies parked in front of the house. One of them was one of the persons that assisted me in moving my belongings earlier. His wife, as well as a friend, arrived. When 7 p.m. rolled around, my wife arrived. She seemed to be somewhat quiet. I'm quite sure she and Amber had gotten into it at that point. I handed her her clothing, the storage key and address, as well as my lawyer's business card. I told her that any communication with me when 7 p.m. rolled around, my wife arrived. She seemed to be somewhat quiet. I'm quite sure she and Amber had gotten into it at that point. I handed her her clothing, the storage key and address, as well as my lawyer's business card. I told her that any communication with me would be done via her. My wife began with the "I love you" nonsense. "We can work it out, she's sorry, she loves me, a mistake, she doesn't love them, it didn't mean anything." I just pointed to my lawyer's business card. She said that it was her home as well, and that I couldn't throw her out. I informed her that it was my house, and that she had practically screwed herself out of it. This is when she became quite vocal. All of the "I love yous" became "yous" and "I hate yous." The cops switched on their lights, and neighbors gathered to see the train disaster. Throughout this, I stayed somewhat cool and kept my hands by my sides. She continued to yell at me. I believe she had been drinking. She began to weep since she had nowhere to go, and when I assured her that I didn't care. So, I discovered a new talent in my wife. She can throw a right. He gave me a nose and a thick lip. I didn't move 1 inch. I simply stood there and watched as she did it. She attempted to scratch my face. She was restrained by the deputies. I refused to file charges. I told them to just make her go. They submitted an incident report, which allowed me to get a TRO. In fact, I'm pleased she did. When she left, I walked back in, and while I was cleaning myself up, all the "I should have been" feeling for the prior 2 months began to hit me. Right now, I'm completely fatigued. I expected to feel better after everything was all said and done. I don't think so. I'm feeling terrible. I'm not one to weep easily, but I've been doing a lot of it since yesterday night. My phone has around 600 unanswered messages and phone calls, and the number is climbing. I'll be in NC with some common pals. I don't want any of them attempting to mediate. I'll take care of them later. Last night, I did not phone my son. Every night, I phoned him. I'll tell him later tonight. He's not likely to be upset by the news. He didn't like her story too. My 21F boyfriend, 22M, of 3 years wants to be independent. What do I dummy partner and I have been dating for about 3 years. To begin with, I have never been in a really devoted relationship, with the exception of my ex, with whom I was not truly in love. Meeting my partner for the first time was the first time I really felt what that emotion was like. I had the full head over heels and hard eyes thing going on with this one. I am a sensitive and needy person, which I am working on. In previous relationships, I desired so much attention that I never considered the effect it might have on a partner. In my present relationship, there have been occasions when I was easily irritated or frustrated by his going out or not paying me the attention I desired. We've spoken throughout the previous several months, and I've been working on myself to be better not just for him, but also for me. He's presently trying to acquire a new automobile since he's started working in stocks and making excellent money. About a week ago, I asked him about Christmas gifts and what he wanted, as well as his thoughts on how we would handle gift exchanges this year. Every time I asked, he said he didn't want to speak about it since he didn't want to at the time. When I asked him if he didn't want to give me anything this year, he said, "I simply thought why not save the money and spend it on something else." I'm also attempting to make an investment for myself. This I understood, but it took me aback since I adore the holidays and we've always enjoyed collecting presents for one another. It wasn't meant to be greedy or selfish, but in response, I stated my dissatisfaction from not sharing gifts, but made it plain that it wasn't a huge issue and that I'd get over it. I also said unequivocally that I understood and supported his choice. We haven't talked in a couple of days, and I'm not sure why he took it so seriously. He mentioned he thought I was expressing my disappointment in him and not holiday traditions. He told me today that he needed to be independent and that he couldn't have any distractions since he felt the need to develop himself. I questioned whether he'd feel the same way if I kept working for my independence and we stayed together. He claims he doesn't know and is attempting to figure it out. We're going to chat in person shortly, but I'm worried. He has been the most incredible, supporting, and kind person in my life, and I don't know what I would do without him. How do I go from here? I've told him I'm working on making positive changes, but I'm not sure why we can't do it together. I've never wanted to make him feel trapped or restricted from doing what he wants. I'm so excited about our conversation, yet I'm not sure what to say. I'd rather speak things out than beg him to remain if he doesn't want to.